Hello and welcome to the next episode of Flicks Through Time. I'm your host, TW Norwich, here as always. Today we're trying things a little bit different. Usually we talk about things on this show across time spans, different historical contexts. This time we're going a little bit geographical. My guest this week is Percy, who is a fan of foreign films. Now we're going to get into those definitions shortly, but what this means is we do a very quick world tour, express some views, and if you're interested in different films from different genres and different locations, then this is the episode for you. Enjoy, and spoilers ahead.
Hello and welcome. Here we are talking about films once again. We're talking about foreign films, and I'm joined by Percy. Percy, welcome to the show.
Hello, Big T. How are you?
I'm
TW.
very well, thank you. I would like to talk parameters for a moment, because when we talk foreign films, that's obviously a very vague term. I'm going to go with the sort of the Anglosphere to some extent, but when I say foreign films, I'm talking about films of origin of non-English background.
Unless you want to talk about American movies, I can do that.
Well, it's foreign from our point of view, but talking Hollywood feels a bit, we wouldn't be the first to do it, put it that way. So yeah, we might get into anything from European film, Asian cinema, we'll just see where things take us. And usually I talk across time spans, but here I guess we're going across geographical lines, and why not mess with the formula a bit? So let's start with a really simple one, in theory. One country, if you had to choose one in the context of foreign film, what country would that be as far as consistently favourite, do you think?
All favourite.
I know that's always tricky, but let's give this really contrived scenario where, for some bizarre reason, you have to choose one country to watch films from for the rest of your life.
Oh, well, I mean, you know what? I would actually I've seen a lot of Korean stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of Japanese stuff.
Yep.
But I feel like if I was to pick one for the rest of my life, it'd be somewhere bizarre, like somewhere I haven't seen any movies from.
Interesting.
Like,
so what are you drawn to then that you don't have experience in?
Iceland.
Really?
Yes.
I was not expecting that. Why Iceland?
There's been a couple movies that I've seen, like maybe the trailer for, or like some movie clips.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that looks really good, but I just haven't gotten around to actually watching anything from there.
Right. Interesting. So you've got an indication, a sense of something, but not actually something yet. Oh, there you go. All right. Well, speaking of nations you are more familiar with, so you mentioned Korea and Japan, and to answer, if I were to ask myself that question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Tito, if you had to pick one country?
If I had to pick one country, well, going from back in time, because I don't know how relevant it is today, but probably my favourite would be Hong Kong cinema. But these days, I think, post-97, I feel like it started to diminish a little bit before the handover of Hong Kong from the UK to China. I don't know if that's related, but it just feels like there was a bit of a shift. But if you go 70s and 80s Hong Kong, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Martial arts films are not my main genre. That's definitely horror. But as far as one country producing, it produced the best martial arts films of all time. And 80s, when Jackie Chan took over the helm from Bruce Lee, that made it his own. Sometimes I watch films for story, sometimes it's acting, sometimes just the general craft. Martial arts films are light on plot, usually, not always, but usually. Yeah. But the craft,
the choreography,
when it's done well, they're some of the best things you put to film. So I'm not sure how that relates to today, but Hong Kong.
I can't say I saw a lot of. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of the martial arts, but I will say the stuff after that, like the parody stuff and the modern day stuff that stems from that, I really like.
You have an example?
Yeah. The what's that?
Kung Fu Hustle.
That's the one. That's
Stephen Chow. Yeah. So that's obviously like I don't know what you call like a post martial arts film. It's not so much about the martial arts; it's about the characters. It's a character film.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, because Stephen Chow, he's done some very iconic films. Kung Fu Hustle is probably the most iconic outside of China, I suppose. That's a big call. Shaolin Soccer was
I was about to say Shaolin Soccer I'm aware and I've seen like snippets of his other stuff that haven't really got.
Yeah, there's
There was a food one he did, wasn't there?
a food one. Well, I recall one called Forbidden City Cop, which is old. I'm going to say 90s. This is all off the top of my head, and it was one of the most genuinely funny films I've seen, and the martial arts in it were quite good. Whereas his later films by the Kung Fu Hustle, Shaolin Soccer era, he tapered off significantly with the martial arts because that wasn't the point anymore. He was doing other things. And he's since done a few films around Journey to the West. Are you familiar with Journey to the West?
I'm not.
It's an old tale. I don't know what a Western equivalent would be, to be honest. But you ever see a old show about the Monkey King? There's one called Monkey.
I'm obviously aware of like the
Monkey Magic
myth.
Right, that all comes from
legend.
Journey to the West.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's been done so many times we can't even count. But he has done a couple of films like that more recently as well. So his films are always interesting. I wouldn't say I'm a particularly big fan of his more modern films because he's leaned more heavily into the comedy, and the comedy doesn't always translate well.
Right, but you said his older one was like the funniest you've ever seen.
Yeah, which I don't quite understand why. I think it was just a bit more slapstick. It had that more 90s feel to it, because I think slapstick stuff tends to translate better.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because some of it's universal, whereas there's a lot of cultural context required for some of his newer films. So, for example, I saw one or maybe even two, I'm trying to remember now, on the big screen with a Chinese audience around me. And there were people really laughing at stuff. And I understood why they found it funny, but I just didn't find it funny myself. So there were some barriers there. So I don't want that to sound like a criticism of the films per se, just my experience with them. But he would also lean more heavily into the violence. So you would have a comedic film with, let's say, sympathetic characters, and then having one of them bludgeoned to death by an oar or something. You just sort of, and I could hear the cringing in the cinema, just a little bit, So a very interesting, eclectic filmmaker. And I know he was asked, I want to say in the last 5 years, are you going to go back to making more martial arts oriented films, or are you going to do this or that, or you've stopped making films, what's the go? And he said, what would I do? I've got nothing left to do. So it sounds like he's one of those people who said, I'll try this, then I'll do this, then I'll do this.
Yep.
And he said, okay, I'm done.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, good on him too. So he's definitely interesting. Right, so it feels like we both have an affinity for Asian cinema. You mentioned Korean. Now, I know we have a little bit of overlap here. I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of Korean cinema, but there are a few films and a couple of filmmakers that have really struck me. And what's your interest in Korean cinema?
It's such a, it's a good question, don't get me wrong, but I don't really have an answer for you just because more of I watched one or two. It's hard to say whether it was the style or whether it was maybe it was something as weird as the geography in the movies, right?
Sure.
Like the backdrop, right?
Yeah, sense of place, I suppose. Well, let me rephrase the question. Is there an interest for you in Korean cinema, or is it Korean culture in general?
Or yeah. Well, so it used to be, definitely, but
so maybe that drew you into cinema at the time.
Yeah, the cinema that I have an interest in.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's talk some specifics around Korean films then, because I know that there's a few that you and I have seen. You said to me once, watch this film called Train to Busan, and basically I think an accurate description would be zombies on a train.
Yeah.
And I love horror, and zombies are the bottom of the list for horror for me, not interested. And
Really?
I said, all right, I'll give it a go. And I must admit, I found the film pretty effective. I thought it was a nice twist on the zombie gimmick, shall we say, and I quite enjoyed it. And then we ended up seeing, do you remember the name of the sequel? Peninsula,
yeah.
Thank you. And that became, to me, that wasn't a horror film. That was like a post-apocalyptic action film where the outbreak from the train had evidently consumed the Korean peninsula, and it was about survival. It felt sort of Mad Max-esque.
Yeah,
but very action oriented, and that was more about.
You weren't a fan of that?
I enjoyed it. I must admit, I haven't thought about returning to either film. So I guess but
I found them quite striking and memorable. I would say I found the sequel more interesting because it expanded on it. But I do have a lot of affection for films in general, but horror films especially, that are very direct. And Train to Busan is a very direct film.
Yeah.
So, for example, one of my guilty pleasures is 80s horror films. And not many people would describe 80s horror films as complex.
No, it's just mostly slashes and
Yes, it's and don't get me wrong, there are some deeper, more interesting and artistic films there, but it's fair to say that the majority are about there's the dude with the knife or whatever. Here's the people that he's going to attempt to kill. Go, you got 87 minutes, including credits, and you're out. And there's something that I respect in that directness, and even the ones that are not done particularly well, as long as they keep the pace up about them, I enjoy them. So if I were to re-watch one for pure enjoyment, Train to Busan, for sure, is the more enjoyable film. But I did find the sequel quite interesting. What did you think about the two of them?
I don't think they're quite as campy as like the 80s horror, obviously. But
Agreed. Not many things are.
No. I would say I've heard not a lot of people really like the second one.
Yeah.
Okay. I really did because you were saying that zombies are the bottom of your list for horror. I really like horror as well, but I really like zombies. But at the same time, I'm not sure. Like, yeah, they're a horror element, right?
Sure.
But the stuff I like about horror is different than the stuff that I like about zombies.
Interesting.
I'm a big zombies fan.
Is it because of the zombies are often used as social commentary, that sort of thing?
Maybe not. Maybe not on such a deep level. It's more like maybe the zombie stuff that I like.
So very specifically, like the idea of an undead living corpse, the slow moving force, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
you find that compelling?
Yeah, in a way, I would like. I think maybe not in the horror aspect, but more just entertainment aspect. Like, I think it's a good subject for a post-apocalyptic.
It's one of the best.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
and I think the games that I play and the movies that I watch generally aren't too deep. I don't really like the deep stuff.
Sure.
So I'll just give me some zombies and I'll watch people run away from them and fight them and die to them and
I must admit, I'm not much of a gamer these days, but zombies as a general obstacle in gaming makes a tremendous amount of sense.
Oh yeah.
I mean, disposable enemies.
Yeah.
Kind of writes
Why
itself.
Why kill one person when you can kill 10,000 zombies? It feels a lot more satisfying.
Absolutely, and they're human enough, not too human. So, well, okay, just to diverge for a moment, because your answer may not be foreign, but favorite zombie properties. What, as in film? Do you like the traditional Romero, like the Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead stuff?
You know what? I actually really haven't seen the old school zombie stuff, so I'm not really too attached to
Walking Dead, perhaps.
Oh, I loved Walking Dead until it got to like the third season. But
okay, all right. No,
but that style,
that's creating a bit of context for your comments around the zombies. I know exactly where you are now. Now, something else we've seen is a film called Parasite, and boy, isn't there a bit to say about Parasite? The director Bong Joon-ho, which I've probably mangled in pronunciation, who I've also seen a film called The Host. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a monster film.
No, I'm pretty sure the only thing of his that I've also seen is Snowpiercer.
There was the other one I was going to mention. I saw Snowpiercer and I thought it was pretty interesting. You know, science fiction as a comment on society and the world around us. It was reasonably effective.
I think that's interesting. Like, you go for the social commentary, the kind of highbrow stuff. I like the concept.
Yeah,
snow train,
going
around the world. That's cool. That's fun.
Yes, it is. It is. But that's the thing, where we're accessing the films in different ways. That's the beauty of art, of course. The Host, just briefly, was, I'm going to say, a good 10 years before Parasite, I think. Yeah, it's a monster film from South Korea where a monster, it's like, I don't want to say Godzilla, it's not like that, but channeling that same kind of energy. Monster escapes, attacking the city. Citizens are in danger. And the cause, American military tips a lot of chemicals into the water.
Yeah,
because of course
I really haven't
there is an
heard
American.
much about that one.
Yeah, there's an American military presence in South Korea since the Korean War, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So that's the fairly blunt commentary that's going on there. Reasonably effective for a monster film. They even show the monster in broad daylight, which is a bold choice for visual effects, and it looked pretty good when I saw it, which is a few years ago now. But Parasite, what an effective film. It's described as a thriller, and there's an interesting...
I'd call it a thriller.
I would call it a thriller, definitely, but there's this debate that goes on. What's the difference between a thriller and a horror?
Oh,
And
yeah.
there is an overlap, obviously. There's an overlap. And there's a comment from horror fans that basically goes like this. If you want it to succeed in a major way and you want it to win awards and you want it to be big, you call it a thriller. And if you don't care, you call it a horror because of the perception of the title. When I watch it, it feels very much like a psychological horror, which is ostensibly, I suppose, what the mainstream calls a thriller. But it feels like a slow burn, slow build.
Oh, it's
horror
definitely
film.
slow burn.
Yeah, and I think the execution of it is brilliant. The acting's fantastic.
Yeah.
But just the concept is so creepy. You've got the poor family that moves into the rich people's house and basically kicks out all the people, like that cuckoo bird that kicks out. Fairly obvious themes going on here. It's talking about classism and all this sort of stuff. But what's interesting, I found, is that it could have said, the poor people are bad because they're taking over, or it could have said, the rich people are bad. It could have portrayed the rich people as horrible people, but I certainly didn't get that sense watching it. It didn't feel like it was taking sides. It was just saying, here's two families and here's how they interact, and in the end, no one wins.
Yeah.
What did you think of the film?
I thought, I do remember when I was watching it, the scene where it was about halfway through the movie where things are really starting to get to a boil. Things are really getting intense, and it's actually thrilling, right? Like literally.
Yes.
And I remember there was probably about 5 minutes of just straight tension where,
this when they were stuck under the couch, basically.
Yeah. And I just remember when they were finally in the clear, I actually had to...
I was exactly the same. And I can tell you, I rewatched that film maybe only a year or two ago. I think maybe it came on Netflix, I can't remember. And I just went, I need to check that this was good. And I watched it again. And obviously, knowing where it goes diffuses some of the tension. But I still, what I like about doing that is then I can really discern, I can really focus on some of the craft. And there's so much high quality execution in that film. It's the pacing, it's the composition, it's just the idea that the couch is in the center of the room. So if you suddenly make an escape from underneath the couch, you're not right.
Yeah, you got nowhere to go.
There's nothing done by accident in that film, and that's probably why.
Really well made.
Yeah. I mean, even at the end, when you have, without spoiling, on the off chance people want to see it, but you've got one of the characters going to I suppose you call it a memorial scene, visiting someone where their ashes have been placed, and just being there, you've got I can't remember if it's the foreground or the background, but you've got a sort of an unskilled worker just cleaning the floor or something like that, very prominently in shot. So you've still got, at the end of the day, these people climbed up and then they fell down again, and then here they are next to the working class again. So there's just little subtle things like that. It doesn't overtly say anything, I think, but it's still clear what it's saying most of the time, and that's just beautiful filmmaking.
You think it's a horror? That's interesting. I've always seen it as other horror. It's a thriller.
Well, this might be splitting hairs.
Yeah.
I mean, a psychological thriller, I think, invariably will have some horror elements in it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The tension, its build-up of tension and release is, by definition, horror. That's literally what horror does. Just like comedy does the polar opposite. You build up and release with a laugh. Horror, you release with a scare or, oh, yay, they escaped. And an effective thriller is doing some of that. So there's definitely some overlap. Just a quick honourable mention, maybe we change geographical states in a moment, but there was a film called Slow Burn. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a Korean film. Just a quick recommendation for that one. It is a slow burn, no pun intended. That's definitely a psychological thriller and very, very effective. It's about a young man who meets a woman and they start to get along, but then she disappears and then he wants to know what happened to her, and there's these other people involved, and he starts to suspect this one bloke. It's astonishingly well shot. So they leave the city and go out into the countryside, so you get to see variable views, strong use of metaphor, the old glass houses that they would have over there. I don't know, small farms would have little hydroponic things or whatever, and those being used as metaphor for people's lives and this sort of thing. So, and a very, very, very effective ending. I won't spoil, but suffice to say, it's a very well executed. It's got one of the best one-ers, one take, long shots, which basically has two people, only one person leaves, gets in a car, drives away, and camera is somehow moved to the car, so that when we then follow them on and they drive for, I don't know, a kilometre or something, and you can sort of see the remaining carnage in the background. It's all done, as far as I know, all in camera. Very, very effective stuff. Anyway, quick mention of that one.
No, that's good.
Yeah, worth checking out. Quick mention of, no, sorry, not a quick mention. I think it'd be logical to move on to Japan. You mentioned Japan earlier. And if I had to choose a country to investigate, let's say, investigate as in what's going on artistically, I think Japan's got to be close to the top of the list because there's always so much going on. There's such a wide range of Japanese film crosses over to so many genres, so many styles, so many formats.
I think there's a reason why so much of Hollywood, adapts stuff from Japan specifically.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, well, I guess the other thing too, of course, is that a lot of manga has made its way over.
Oh, yeah.
So you got a lot of people just reading the graphic novels across the world now, which wasn't always the case, or the anime series and so on. So there's a sense that people are already connecting with the Japanese culture, Japanese art. It's difficult to say even where to start, but I guess I'll mention some of the more adult-oriented stuff because the first thing I think of when I think of Japanese film is the animated stuff. And for people of my age and a few years older, the big thing was Akira.
Yeah.
When Akira came out, that was the film that changed everything, and I think still holds up particularly well. And that was, I can't remember exactly when it was shipped. I want to say late 80s, maybe at 1990 by the time it really soaked into North America and certainly Australia as well. And that was the first time foreign audiences, from a Japanese perspective, saw what they could do.
But even, from a horror perspective, we're talking about just a lot of old school Japanese horror that made it big, like Ringu or Grudge.
Yes. So horror and spirits and demons, and even if it's not supernatural, a little bit of graphic violence and body horrors never seems to be too far away. And I find that interesting. The spiritual stuff makes sense, and as far as I can tell, anyway, I'm saying this through ignorance, but it feels like there's a lot of spiritual knowledge within the Japanese population. It's not to say that everyone is spiritual, but you've got this long history of culture. So, for example, things like the nine-tailed fox, this kind of recurring characters, as it were, that are featured in quite a range. That's all.
Yeah. Or we were just talking about Rukon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just characters just across all these different cultures just kind of pop up and told in all these different ways.
Yeah, and if you've got general population recognition, it makes sense why they then appear in the art. Why are things so violent all the time? Can't really say, but they're not afraid to show that or to add in sexual content, which was, I think, pretty confronting for Western audiences, especially Americans who are used to have as much violence as you want, but sex gets cut. And I know of a couple of films from the 90s that were distributed by a company called Manga Entertainment, but they were distributing mostly anime films, not manga comics. But anyway, but in the 90s, a few of them came through. Have you seen a film called Ninja Scroll by any chance?
No.
That's one of the first ones I saw. R-rated, very violent, very good film. I rewatch it from time to time. Very effective film. Our version, the Australian version, was uncut. And since the copy I have is now the American edited version, and the only difference is some of the sex scenes are cut down, which I think is an improvement because it felt, despite me loving that film, they felt a bit gratuitous. Not pornographic, but just you got your point across in the first 10 segens. It didn't need to go on for 30 seconds or an hour. Yeah, especially when you're portraying rape and all this sort of stuff. You go, okay, you want to show that this character is truly evil, doesn't care about how it impacts other people. You can get that point across in 10 seconds. You don't need it to go on. So I actually prefer the edited one myself. But I remember seeing these, 12 or 13-year-old R-rated films, which in Australian context means 18 plus, and it should be 18 plus, and I shouldn't have seen it, but here we are. So that you've got that stream, but then you have this other stream of wonderful and delightful family-friendly films, television, and I mean, I guess there's room for everything. But what draws you to Japanese film? What are your interests in it? There's a lot to cover, but what are the things that stand out for you?
I would say one thing that I've noticed in a lot of the Japanese media I've seen is it's very idyllic, which is weird to say after all the horror we're talking
Yes,
about.
that's right.
but just like the backdrops of Japan, a very beautiful country, and it just kind of takes you to a different place. All the shots of food, especially in the animated shows. Food just it looks unnaturally good.
Yeah, and the responses from the characters are always very theatrical and hyperbolic.
Yes, yeah. So I would say that's definitely that's my first instinct. That it just kind of
The first thing that jumps to mind.
Yeah.
Are there any particular films, filmmakers, or genres that jump out to you in Japanese film?
Well, I think we've covered the horror. I think I really do love a lot of Asian horror. Not just from Japan. I remember watching Girl from Nowhere, which is a Thai show.
Yeah,
Which is really good.
I have seen some Thai horror, and they're definitely...
Oh, Thai horror is crazy, yeah.
Yes. It feels like they're drawing from Japanese horror, but they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, because Girl from Nowhere is directly influenced by Junji Ito, a Japanese horror manga artist.
Ah, interesting.
So his work, Tomy, is directly influenced by that. Almost copied. Not quite copied, but almost copied.
Heavily inspired by
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, Asian horror, you can kind of clumsily lump it all together because it has a lot of very similar themes and motifs. But at the same time, it's so diverse. I mean, Indonesian horror, I've only seen a couple. Oh boy, there's some pretty wacky ones. I'm trying to think. Was it Ghost of Bali? I'm just going from memory. I didn't know we'd end up talking Indonesian horror here. I want to say Ghost of Bali or Witch of Bali or something, and you end up with a disembodied, basically a head with all the entrails. This is like 80s and very cheap blue screen effects, right? And floating around, and it's actually an American woman, but she happened to be the protagonist, but her head's there. And one of the things it does is will attach itself to a heavily pregnant woman and suck out the baby. And
I've got to say, the creativity on these movies.
Well, that's based off, what do you call it? I guess traditional folklore. So they don't come from nowhere, which I guess is what gives them their regional
But even
identity.
the folklore comes from somewhere,
Right. I mean, how do you... That hurts my brain. I mean, the good thing about watching the film is that the effects are bad enough that it's watchable, because if you saw that in ultra-realistic effects, I think it would be too confronting.
Oh, yeah, the 80s-ness adds to it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And at one point she turns into a pig. But anyway, so, yeah, the horror, Asian horror is not my favourite horror, but
What would you say is your favourite horror?
Ooh.
Probably the 80s that you were talking about, the slashes?
Oh, that's my favourite guilty pleasure.
Okay.
But I think if we were talking... Well, okay, not talking foreign film for a moment, I would say my two favourite eras, the 80s slashes, which are predominantly American, but not all.
and the 1930s horror, the original monster horror films, Dracula and all this, right back to the core. Jekyll and Hyde, a lot of those were Universal, some were American, some were British. But if we're talking foreign film, the one that I find most intriguing is Italian horror, especially from the 70s. They are surreal, they are often abstract, they're what you call real art house films.
Yeah.
They are giallo films, and I've only seen a handful, but every single one of them I can't stop looking. They have a fascination with eyes, so stabbing people in eyes.
That's the one thing. Like that and fingernails, I can't.
I know.
I've got to go to I've got to book a plane ticket to a different country. I've just got to be away from it.
I hear. I don't want to say it's in every film, and sometimes the effects are a bit cheesy, but that doesn't make it. It doesn't detract from the impact.
Yeah.
So, but so talking foreign, the Japanese would be a close second. I think what I like about the Japanese horror is it has a lot to do with Japanese filmmaking in general, where it crosses genres a lot. So you'll have something that is like a supernatural action film, I guess, that will have horror elements, and it will combine really strong character-driven plots, and horror and sexual elements and all these other things, and they're just going to go, yep, sure, all of that in one film.
Yeah,
and you go.
Yeah.
And there's no one else doing that other than Japanese.
Have you seen Godzilla -1?
Or yes, now
because that was what came to mind when you were saying that. How I've never even seen any other Godzilla movies. Right? You don't really need to know that it's a big monster.
Yep.
He crushes some buildings.
Yep.
But Godzilla -1, it was character driven.
Yes.
He was set in the war, obviously.
Yeah, I think that
Godzilla was like he wasn't I wouldn't even call him an antagonist in that. He was just like a side character almost.
Yeah, the characters, generally speaking, you want Godzilla to be at the center of a Godzilla film because you're there to see the mayhem.
Yeah.
And this was a good example of putting the humans front row center and doing it very well. I like the idea of going back to the war. The plot briefly, as an outline, you've got a kamikaze pilot who fails in his mission because he's still alive after the war. And what the themes, it was kind of like a revisionist thing, not as in revising history, but saying we should. It felt like a people coming to terms with the past, because the film was basically saying he's ridiculed that. Wait a minute, you're a kamikaze pilot. Why are you here?
Yeah.
So he's dishonorable, very highly dishonorable. And then when he's faced with an opportunity to do it again, I can effectively be the kamikaze pilot now against Godzilla. He says, well, now here's my chance to redeem myself. And there's a great speech before that where one of the leaders is saying, we've got to go out. This is only a few years after the war. These are all ex-military. Obviously, they lost the war, and here they are trying to get on with life. And now there's this monster coming towards them. And the leader of the group says something like, we need to go out, we need to win, but we need to survive. And that was a revised philosophy of the time. The idea that divine wing, the kamikaze, do whatever it takes to survive. Divine meaning, heavenly, it will be, as long as we throw ourselves at this thing, we can't lose. And this was the people now who had these characters that survived the war and said, no, that was wrong. We should have valued our lives more. And I thought that was a really beautiful, powerful thing coming from Japanese people. No one else could have told that as effectively. And I also found the main character, who had effectively become a father, surrogate father, and his relationship with his daughter, or say adopted daughter, I suppose, was really beautiful. And that girl, they knew 2 or 3 years old, I'm not sure, very, very young. They knew to use her sparingly, but very effectively.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of emotion in the film. Visual effects were fantastic, and I was shocked to see the budget. When I looked at it, it was only, I can't remember now, $5, $6, $7 million or something.
Really?
Really cheap film.
Because I saw it in cinemas. And
really?
Yeah, and it just, the effects with, not just Godzilla himself, but even just the war side of it.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Highly effective film. I can't recommend
because any Godzilla movie, unless you're going shoestring like they did back in the day, it's going to cost you a bit for all the effects.
Yeah, so I was quite shocked. I can't remember the number now, but it was shockingly low when you look at the American ones costing $100 or $200 million, and they weren't, I don't think, looking any better. Mind you, they have more effects, of course, and they have multiple monsters.
So it's almost a different genre there. That's like you're not really looking at a story anymore. You just come down for 2 hours of
Watch them smashing some dolls together, basically. Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's just different.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Here is our goal. Here's our target audience, and away they go. They did a pretty good job of it, I would say. Changing tracks a little, not changing geography. Maybe a nice place to finish is talking about the family-friendly side of things. The first ever film that I can recall seeing that's what I would describe as family-friendly of Japanese origin was My Neighbor Totoro. And My Neighbor Totoro was, I had no idea what it was. I was about 30 when I watched it.
Okay.
And I was thinking, this looks like a little kid's thing. And I was enthralled, watched it through to the end, and it's still one of my favorite animated films. Because remember, family friendly doesn't mean for children.
No.
It means wide audience. And have you ever seen My Neighbor Totoro?
That was actually the first Japanese movie I'd ever seen.
Oh, well, there you go.
Although I was a little bit younger than 30. I was about 10.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, I don't know. I've rewatched it a bit. My son has discovered it. So it's on regular replays, which I'm pretty happy about. There's been a couple others come up. I've only seen, so this is Studio Ghibli, 1980s. And then, of course, he goes on, the studio does so many things. Quick list of the ones I've seen. I'd be interested to hear yours, but Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, and Princess, I forgot the name, Princess Mononoke,
Yeah, Mononoke.
was that it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I thought I was mangling titles for a second there. I think, and Ponyo. I think, and I've seen a couple others that have been done by, perhaps animated by Studio Ghibli, but maybe not made by Miyazaki himself, or ones that are done by ex-staff. So his apprentices that go off and start their own studios. What's your take on the Ghibli films?
Well, on that last point, just last night I saw Mary and the Witch's Flower.
Oh, okay.
It's not a Ghibli movie, but it was directed by I don't remember his name, but he was a big guy from Studio Ghibli.
Mm.
And I actually had to look that up because I knew it wasn't a Ghibli movie, but after I started, I was thinking this is a Ghibli movie.
Right.
It was a different animation studio, but it was animated just that
Same
style.
Yeah, it's become so iconic, hard to define.
Yeah, I would say that it's hard to define, but you just know when you see it.
Absolutely, it's hence it's a Ghibli style. What else can you call it? It's like a pseudo-realistic. I don't even know. Yeah,
Handcrafted. That's what I would use to describe it.
Very nice. Yeah, no, that's perfect. It's lovingly created. I mean, I particularly liked the way he approaches other stories. Like My Neighbor Totoro was basically him looking at Alice in Wonderland and saying, let's do that, but use it just as a starting point and do something completely different. So you can see just little references to the original text, but ultimately it's doing something wildly different. Ponyo is My Little Mermaid, but again, wildly different. And what strikes me in a couple of the films, not all of them, Spirited Away certainly has an antagonist, but some of them have no clear villain.
Yeah.
It's just people doing their thing. I mean, the major threat, as it were, in My Neighbor Totoro is that one of the girls goes missing, and then Totoro helps reunite.
That actually did throw me off when I was younger and watching it for the first time, and I was waiting for there to be a villain.
Yeah, where's the villain? Because it's the Hollywood, the American, or the Western way.
Yeah, or at least for Disney, which is where it gets all the inspiration from.
Sure.
But nearly every Disney movie has that
clear villain.
Yes.
Not just a villain, a clear...
Yeah, which is why I remember watching, Encanto. I don't know if you've seen that one,
No, I haven't.
It's a similar one where I was waiting, the movie was halfway through, where's the villain?
Where's the bad guy?
And it's like, it doesn't have a villain. It's a story about family and family trauma and all that,
It reminds me, it's kind of like the dramas. I've seen, I don't know if you've seen any Akira Kurosawa films, but Kurosawa, I mean, he's probably most famous for like Seven Samurai, for example. The Seven Samurai is very clear.
Yeah, I never really got into that.
No, fair enough. That's a fairly straightforward one. It's shockingly well made, beautifully made, but it's 7 samurai protecting a village against these raiders. It's simple structure, right? Mm-hmm. Execution's fantastic. But then Kurosawa will make films about family dramas. And family dramas don't typically have villains. So it feels like, I mean, they can, of course, but they don't have in this kind of, when you're talking escapism, it's almost inconceivable that you wouldn't have a clear protagonist and antagonist. Yet Kurosawa said, nah, that's fine. This is about children and sort of growing up and I guess him reliving his youth a little bit, because I think, at least with Totoro, I believe it's set in the 50s, which is probably, I don't think how old he is, I guess he would have been a child in the 50s, I think. Mm. So it's kind of him reliving his childhood and just having fun with it and saying, you can go down this rabbit hole and there's nice things there. If you go there with the innocence of a child, you can experience these things. Yeah. And no one can see Totoro or these other spirits except for children, because they still have that innocence in them. That's it.
That's definitely what brought me to it, just that, innocence. Yeah, it just, it was like what I was saying about the Japanese media channel, it just pulls you in.
Yeah.
And that's especially done from that animation style as well, like the handcraftedness of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Everything's just because Miyazaki, he demands perfection.
Yeah, that's what I've gathered. He's reviewing thousands of shots a day and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean,
I remember, I think it was Grave of the Fireflies, maybe, but there was one shot, it was like a 7-second shot, even shorter than that, I think. And it took them a year to complete it, because I had all these different characters in it. It was like a bustling city street that everybody was moving through.
Wow.
And it just took them that long, because everything had to be perfect.
Yeah, and again, I love craft. If you've got a good story, great, but if you can see high quality craft, I mean, that's the thing, their paintings come to life in a way. I mean, you imagine, if you take, say, My Name is Totoro and give it to someone like Guillermo del Toro, you end up with, Labyrinth or something. Or you have this. Well, you go down the rabbit hole, something definitely bad will happen to you, and it has its value too. But it's just so refreshing. I don't know. It feels like a safe place. It's like a warm blanket.
Yeah,
that's what going back to your childhood should be. Hopefully, I think he captures it beautifully, like no one else. Have you seen? He's got the new film out. Was it The Boy and the Heron? I think.
I saw it. I just didn't like it.
Tragic.
Yeah.
I was watching a documentary about it, and as a fan, I would. It's just nice. He came out of retirement again.
Yes.
He's had more comebacks from John Farnham, I think, but yeah, good on him. He still had a story in him.
It's acclaimed as far as I'm aware. I don't even know why. It was just
you didn't gel. Yeah. I hear. Well, we went on quite a journey there, didn't we? If I were to summarise that conversation, I would say it sounds like we have some overlap in taste, but perhaps for different reasons. Japanese films, definitely a lot to talk about. Korean cinema, some real gems.
Yeah. And I'll have to watch some Ascending movies and get back to you.
Evidently. Yeah, maybe there's a part 2 down the track, perhaps. Oh, and quick mention too, highly honourable mention to back to South Korea just for a moment. Back in 2003, there was a film called Old Boy, which is
of course,
probably my favourite. I forgot to mention that earlier. Probably my favourite Korean film. And boy, what a ride! Have you seen that? Or is more you've seen bits?
I've technically not seen it, but I've read so much about it. I've seen so much about it that I haven't seen it. It's not fair to say to the filmmaking of it.
Sure.
But,
I actually this would be a nice a wacky way to end the episode. I'll firstly I got into it because I saw this. I think it's like a 2.5 minute one take fight scene along the corridor.
That's the famous scene. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Again, the craft. I said I need to see this film, and it lives up to it. Boy, I don't want to say. That's all I knew. That's all I want to say about it. But I'm just going to provide just a few things I'm going to say from the film, completely out of context. And if this doesn't make anyone want to watch this film, I don't know what will.
So we have a man who is trapped inside a hotel room for, I think, a couple of decades, eats nothing but, there's one particular dish that's served over and over to him. And when he gets out, he goes around to every restaurant that serves that same dish until he vomits. So we got to identify where he was, because he doesn't know where he's kept prison. One character tells more or less his life story to a man on a roof who is about to kill himself. And upon finishing the story, that man still jumps. A man eats a live octopus for real. It is still the most shocking scene I have ever seen in film. Seeing a living creature trying to get away and survive. I don't know if I've actually seen it. I think I always turn away. It's anyway. Oh, and then a character, I won't say which one, cuts off his own tongue so he cannot reveal a certain secret. And they all happen. A lot of those happen all within the first 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I call it a recommendation, but I think if you have that out of context, I'm not sure if you would. But there it is. All right, well, let's wrap things up. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground, and I would love to hear what we have to say next time. But Percy, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.